And I think you're right. I think now we have this weird thing where the shills, the real shills, if you will, or the people who were toxically positive or overly positive are now like the market has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I think you're onto something there, Brian. I think the market has shifted, and now everybody's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be real about Star Wars.
But okay, here comes the hot take. And I'm sorry if I offend anyone listening to them. I speak for Bryan Barry and Pink Milk, not Pete or Nick. So please do not go at them. I feel there was a lot of phoniness exposed during the writer strikes. And again, I was not directly involved. So I also don't know. I mean, I would have just covered everything. So I'd been like, I'm not a writer. I'm speaking as a fan. I'm talking about a show that I like because that's what I need to do. And we should still watch it because those people still worked very hard and we should still watch the show. And also, they should also be paid more if they are making them lots of money. Both things can exist. I feel like a lot of podcasters, some of them are very successful and also lovely people on a personal level, the people that I've met. I feel there's a lot of, I'm just going to say how great Star Wars is and never critique it because I like my free gifts. I've been sent promotional boxes before. It's a lovely thing. I like to be invited to red carpets. I like to get this. I like my Twitter exposure. I like those things. And I'm going to play the game to get there. And if that's what you want to do, that's cool. I'm really not making a comment on that. That's your prerogative. But I feel there was something very phony and shady and something I did not like in I stand with the Writers Guild and I stand with SAG-AFTRA and we will not be talking about these things. And again, don't come to listen to me for perfect facts and dates. So that was on a Tuesday, right? And then Wednesday, everything was settled. And boom drops every podcast episode they did because they didn't stop working. They didn't stop talking about it. They actually didn't really stand by them. They were doing the PC game, and then their Instagram feeds and Twitter feeds filled up with like 500 pictures of every video that they made because they weren't actually really standing up against anything. You were just trying to play the PC game of you're playing optics. You didn't actually, you weren't true, you weren't honest, and you weren't being authentic. And if you feel upset by that and you're listening, then maybe you should look in the mirror and go, oh, am I upset because maybe you made a point? Or no, whatever, because both things can happen. But I think listeners noticed that, and I don't think people appreciated it. I mean, that's how I feel.
I could not agree more with you on this stuff. I think one of the biggest things was it was weird to me to see people say I stand with the actors who asked people not to promote the show. And I hear what you're saying. And yet they still, they held that up. I support SAG-AFTRA. And then they did, worse, I think, was to say that and then do their after shows for Ahsoka. And that was incredibly strange. And then backpedal and make it, sort of, they made it fit their narrative so that it was okay. And I'm not even talking about the way we handled it because I think you probably supported the way we handled it, but it's, but so what does that connect that to where we are today?
Sorry. Yeah. So I think I think people didn't like the phoniness. They listened to people who only liked things. And I honestly, maybe they really listen to them because they want a positive experience. But I'm sorry. I think you're phony. You're phony at that point.
Right.
You're phony. And I think especially after the pandemic, I think people really are looking for authenticity. I mean, right down to YouTube for a few months there, everyone was holding up their Shure MV7 microphone. It's more authentic to hold the microphone and have a conversation with you. And I'm not going to edit anymore. I'm going to do wrong things, but
make it more personal.
Yeah, but you're just you're trying to chase the YouTube algorithm, right? So they're stopping doing that. So I think people are after being honest. And so I think people feel like I can be a fan and have a critique. I'm not going to be afraid of being labeled a toxic fan by sharing an honest opinion because I'm kind of tired of the phoniest. I'm tired of the toxically positive and I'm tired of the toxically negative. So I'm just going to be me.
And this is
Yeah.
where I am so frustrated, because Nick and I know from watching you guys, that has existed. That has existed. We have always, I mean, if you watch anything we do, if you follow me on Twitter, if I don't like something, I just won't talk about it. I will never say I loved it if I didn't. And when you come to the show, I mean, we just did a whole series on the sequels, the good, the bad, and the controversial, and we dug into the things we liked and we didn't like. And I think you're right. I think now we have this weird thing where the shills, the real shills, if you will, or the people who were toxically positive or overly positive, are now like, the market has shifted. So maybe I think you're onto something there, Brian. I think the market has shifted, and now everybody's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be real about Star Wars. And I think, to your point, Brian, I think people are going to go back and it's sort of like that other guy, the Bricks and Screws guy, who made his first 6 years of content, talking about lore and doing things. And then he realized, holy shit, if I beat up Star Wars, if I get on this Kathleen Kennedy train, if I join the right-wing extremist perspective on Star Wars, look, my subscriptions go through the roof. I'm going to do that. So now I think that's where that's going. And you know what? My only hope is that people will be like, yeah, the people who have been authentic since the beginning, the Bryan Barrys, the SSW networks, the other handful of shows out there, they've been doing it that way for a while, because you can be, and I think one of the things that we're proving is that you can be you can be critical without being Nick, you say it all the time, you can not like something, you just are not allowed to be an asshole about it, and that's what it is.
And I feel that was something that I don't think I knew was another reason people liked what we did. And I think that's why people come here, because we have interviews and talk about creators and why they enjoy what they do. And we just talk about Star Wars. We don't need to have, it's okay to just talk about Star Wars. And if you put a fun show together, I think, again, no one came to us to learn anything new about Star Wars. We were never the podcast that someone went to right after a show to like, let's deep dive on this. Yep. We might be the podcast they go to the following week and just have a good time.
Yep.
And I feel like that is what people are going to the internet for, is to kind of have a good time, have a real conversation about whatever it is. And I think people are finding shows that are that, because I think we understood, maybe we all came to understand what authenticity really was during that strike, because I think we saw, like, you weren't supporting us if you had all this ready to go. You can't hit the drop button and release, 8 episodes covering each episode of Ahsoka all in the same week. So we knew people picked up, they were doing it right then. And that's hypocritical. You shouldn't have watched it. If you were going to talk about it, you're going to stand by the people, you shouldn't have watched it. You should have waited to watch it. You should have not given Disney your numbers.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just a hypocrite.
100%. And again, the value, even the smallest of shows, because the thing that, and then we'll wrap up here, but even the smallest of shows, that was, Disney needed all those little podcasts, all those little shows, all those little YouTube streamers, because they weren't on Jimmy Kimmel, because they weren't on the Tonight Show.
Yep.
They needed those voices, and you were doing it. You were supporting it. You were, and say what you will about, and look, I think we all supported SAG-AFTRA.
Yes.
But
sure.
did you really support SAG-AFTRA?